إن شاءوا يتوب عليهم إن الله كان غفورا رحيما. ورد الله الذين كفروا بغيظهم لم ينالوا خيرا وكفى الله المؤمنين القتال وكان الله قويا عزيزا. وكان الله قويا عزيزا. صدق الله مولانا العلي العظيم. الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على وآل محمد. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن عليًا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليًا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. حي على خير العمل. حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وعلى آلائه. لا إله إلا الله إلها واحدا أحدا فردا صمدا قيوما. نؤمن له بالربوبية ونقر له بالعبودية. الله فهو له وليا مرشدا. ونشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك وترحم على محمد وآل محمد، أفضل ما صليت وسلمت وباركت وترحمت على إبراهيم وآل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. صل اللهم وسلم على أصفيائه وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وعلى من تبعهم بإحسان وإيمان إلى قيام يوم الدين. عباد الله، أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله عز وجل ولزوم أمره. قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. God states in the Holy Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, O people, we have created you from a male and a female and made you into nations and tribes so that you should recognize one another. In God's eyes, the most honored of you is the most God-conscious. God is all-knowing, all-aware. Amin billah. Sadaqallahu al-Ali al-Azim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa. Our world is plagued with various problems. We find that the world is riddled with poverty. 80%, according to some estimates, 80% of the world's population live on less than $10 a day. And up to half of the world's population lives on less than $2. And we find that crime is widespread. In the United States alone, there are hundreds of thousands of violent crimes every single year. And we know that gun violence is a problem in our country. Every single day, people are killed with the use of guns, either through suicide or through accidental use or through mass shooting. Even in places like California, we saw just last month that there were several violent crimes and mass murders. War is rampant in the world. There are dozens of conflicts around the world. There are several humanitarian disasters as a result of these wars. But one of the worst and most pressing problems in the world today is the existence of ideologies of hate and intolerance. Individuals and groups who exhibit racism, xenophobia, even religious extremism. And we find that ideologies of hate, ideologies of tolerance, sometimes they serve as the basis for these other problems. For why we have violent crimes, for why we have poverty sometimes, for why we have war and conflict. And we find that the ideologies of hate and intolerance, the problem is that they exhibit a sense of supremacy. They believe themselves, individuals and groups believe themselves to be superior to others based on several factors, either based on the color of their skin or national identity, or even when it comes to their religious beliefs. That my religious beliefs are true and religious others are false, better than. And so we find that these groups exist. And according to some estimates in the United States, only in the United States, there are well over 1,000 groups hate groups that operate just in the United States. Well over 1,000 hate groups that operate on different levels. So the question is, why does so much hate? Why is there so much intolerance? And one answer is that in large part, these groups and ideologies exist because we as human beings have focused our attention solely on our differences, what makes us different from one another, and we have forgotten our similarity, what we have in common with one another. And further, we've used differences as superiority. Consider ourselves as superior to others. And this is sustainable. It cannot continue for individuals and groups to believe that they are superior because of their difference. This is unsustainable. It continues to perpetuate intolerance and, God forbid, in some cases, violence as well towards others. It's true that we have differences. No one should deny that as human beings, we have differences. In fact, the Quran lays out several areas in which we have differences. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that He has created us into nations and tribes, شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِل. Ya ayyuhan nas, O humans, O people, we have created male and female and made you into nations and tribes. Different nations, different groupings. The Quran tells us this very clearly. In another verse, Allah tells us, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافُ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ وَأَلْوَانِكُمْ. From God's signs, of the signs of God, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ, ayah is what? Is a sign, right? Sometimes we use it for verse, like ayah of the Quran can also mean a sign. And all of the verses of the Quran are signs. They point us towards God. God says among God's signs, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, the creation of the heavens and the earth, وَاخْتِلَافُ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ وَأَلْوَانِكُمْ. Your differences in what? In speech, أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ, your languages, وَأَلْوَانِكُمْ, and the color of your body, your skin color. This is a sign of God. God has created us with differences, physical differences. In another verse, in fact, God tells us, even when it comes to our beliefs, even what we believe in, our religious belief, our laws, God says, لِكُلٍّ جَعَلْنَا مِنْكُمْ شِرْعَةً وَمِنْهَاجًا. To each of you, we have made a law and a way. Shir'ah is what we talk about Islamic law as Sharia, right? Sharia, literally, Shir'ah is a path, right? Shir'atan wa minhaja. Minhaj is a curriculum, a way. God says for each of you, we have created a law, a specific law. Your law, your beliefs will differ from the laws and beliefs of another group. Your way, your curriculum, if you will differ from that of others. So here the Quran tells us that by divine design, that God has created the universe and the creation, human beings, animals, and other creations, different. Differences in our languages, in our appearances, in our ideas, in our groupings. So we should not deny that we are different, that there are differences amongst ourselves. The problem is when we use these differences to claim superiority over others, to consider ourselves better than others because of the color of my skin, or the language that I speak, or the nation that I come from, or even the beliefs that I believe in, the school of thought that I adhere to. This is the problem, when we use differences to claim superiority and intolerance, and use our differences as a sort of division, a source of division amongst ourselves. We have to realize that there is divine wisdom. God did not create us in different ways so that we can be divided, so that we are tolerant of one another. so that we can claim superiority over one another. And this is what we learn from not just the Quran, but the Prophet. 13th of Rajab, this weekend, tomorrow, we celebrate the anniversary of the birth of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. And of course, I extend my congratulations to all of you and all who hold the love of the Holy Prophet, Amir al-Mu'mineen, in their hearts on this joyous occasion. Great lesson that we learned. Imam Ali alayhi salam, if we look at during his time, we are reminded of one of his most powerful teachings, and that is his vision for humanity. Imam Ali is a figure who not only the adherents of Ahlul Bayt benefit from, not just Muslims benefit, but all humans benefit from wisdom, life, and legacy of Amir al-Mu'mineen. In the year 38 after Hijrah, after Amir al-Mu'mineen, he assumed the leadership, the Khilafah of the Muslims, after all of the turmoil that had occurred before. Imam Ali assumed the leadership of the Muslims. He became the caliph. And by his time, the Muslims had expanded outside of Arabia, the surrounding regions, to Iraq and Iran and Egypt and Syria. They had taken over this large region of land. It was under Muslim control. So the caliphs, they had governors in many of the major cities. When Amir al-Mu'mineen, he assumed the Khilafah, he appointed one of his companions, Malik al-Harith al-Nakha'i, known as Malik al-Ashtar. He appointed him as governor of Egypt. So he appointed him as governor of Egypt. And along with him, with his appointment, gave him a letter, instructed him how to deal as a governor, how to deal with his community. And this is mentioned and it is recorded in Nahjul Balagha, the letter number 53. It's recorded in its entirety. Imam Ali's instruction, Malik al-Ashtar, governor of Egypt. And in fact, this letter was referenced by the former General Secretary of the United Nations, Kofi Annan, in 1997 at the anniversary, the 50th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Former Secretary General of the United Nations, he mentioned this, Kofi Annan, to all of the leaders, including the Muslim leaders. And he told them, you have this beautiful teaching of your leader, Ali ibn Abi Talib. And just listen, it's a very beautiful letter. It's a long letter, but I want to share with you just a small part of this letter so that we can understand how beautiful his teachings are and his vision for humanity. Imam Ali's vision for humanity. He says, وَأَشْعِرْ قَلْبَكَ الرَّحْمَةَ لِلرَّعِيَّةِ وَالْمَحَبَّةَ لَهُمْ وَاللُّطْفَ بِهِمْ وَلَا تَكُونَنَّ عَلَيْهِمْ سَبْعًا ضَارًّا تَغْتَنِمُ أَكْلَهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ صِنْفَانِ إِمَّا أَخٌ لَكَ فِي الدِّينِ أو وَإِمَّا نَظِيرٌ لَكَ فِي الْخَلْقِ. He says, O Malik, habituate your heart to have mercy for your subject. Train your heart. You are a governor, have an army, have resources, have control, have prestige. Train your heart, habituate your heart for what? To have mercy for your subject. Make this your primary characteristic in the way that you deal with those whom you have control over. And to affection and kindness to them. Affection. And then he says, do not stand over them like a greedy beast who desires to devour them. Some leaders, they spend time, effort, and resources, lots and lots of, to get to where they are, so that they can take advantage of people. Like a greedy beast. just waiting for his prey, so devour them. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, "Oh Malik, that should not be your goal. You have power and prestige. Do not stand over your subjects like a greedy who just wants to devour them, take advantage of them." And then he tells him, he says, because people are of two kinds. They are either your brethren in religion or your counterparts. Reminding, saying, anyone that you interact with will fall into one of two categories. Either they share with you your religious beliefs, they are your brothers and sisters in religion, and this is what the Quran tells us, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ. Believers are brothers and sisters, right? Their relationship is like siblings. Of course, an ideal sibling, one passion, concern for one another. Or if they don't share your religious teachings, they are what? They are your counterparts. They're human. God created you, and God created them. We all have the same creator. We don't have a different creator. So we have that point, either this point of contact or commonality when it comes to our religious beliefs and practices, or we have our shared humanity. Remarkable. Because despite the importance of religious fellowship, so many verses in the Quran, so many ahadith tell us, take care of your relations with your brothers and sisters in faith. Help one another. Come to one another's aid. Do not engage in conflict. Right? Despite the importance of religious fellowship, Imam Ali here reminds us all of a very important relationship that is equally important, and that is our shared humanity. And further, that our recognition of our shared humanity should lead us to engage in kindness and compassion. It's not just in abstract. Not just that I recognize that you're a human being and I'm a human being, that you are God's creation, I'm God's creation. But this recognition should lead us to live and to interact with one another with mercy, kindness, affection, compassion. This is what Amir al And this is a really beautiful point following. We take this sermon, this letter, we consider it in its historical context. It applies to every time and place. But let's consider it very briefly for a moment in historical context. When Amir al-Mu'mineen became the caliph in the 1st century after Hijrah, 7th century, the Common Era, these different regions, Iraq, Iran, Syria, Egypt, all of these different regions surrounding that the Muslims had control over, these were largely non-Muslim populations. In fact, some researchers have engaged in extensive research, and they tell us that in the 1st century, especially the first half of the 1st Islamic century, in Egypt, in Syria, in Iraq, and Iran, the Muslim population of these regions was no more than 2 or 3% of the population of these. Muslims had developed in where? In Arabia. Islam had spread in Arabia. The majority of Arabia became Muslim, even within the lifetime of the Prophet and immediately afterwards. But the surrounding regions outside of Arabia were largely non-Muslim, and it was not until 250 years after Hijrah that the Muslims became a majority in terms of their numbers. Here, Amir al-Mu'mineen is reminding Malik that you are going to be living and interacting in where you, as a Muslim, you have control. You are the governor. You have an army. You make the laws. You determine what is right and wrong. You implement the laws. You have control. You have political power. But even then, the vast majority will be interacting with are non-Muslims. They don't share your faith, but they are human beings. They are your counterparts. So be merciful, engage in kindness and compassion. And here we find that the Imam promotes this idea of peaceful coexistence. We always talk about peaceful coexistence, something that we all want, we all value in every society. Back then, 1,400 years ago, Imam Ali alayhi salam, he promotes this idea of peaceful coexistence with people not share your. And this is perhaps one of the most, if not the most important element of interaction. When the Prophet came and he brought his message, this message of Iman and Islam and accepting God and accepting the Prophet, this relationship, it trumped all other relationships. It surpassed your tribe. No longer now is your tribe the most important bond. Now the most important bond is what? Is your faith. It transcends tribe. It transcended color of skin. This is why we find diversity in the followers of the Prophet from Africa, from Iran, from Iraq, from the Byzantine Empire, the Romans, everywhere is there. They're all represented because this relationship of Iman and Islam, it transcended all of these other differences. Despite the importance of this relationship, Imam Ali says there's another equally important, and that is of humanity. You are human. You are all the creation of God. And so here we really find really profound teaching of something that was well beyond. And if we take time to consider the life of Balagha by itself, only Balagha is a treasure time to read, ponder, contemplate, think about. We find that there are innumerable lessons to learn the life and legacy of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wal-'asr. إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. صلوات. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، نحمده ونسبحه ونقدسه على آلائه ونعمائه، ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، ونشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك وترحم على محمد وآل محمد كأفضل ما صليت وسلمت وباركت وترحمت على إبراهيم وآل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. صل اللهم وسلم على أصفيائه وأهل بيته، وعلى علي أمير المؤمنين وقائد الغر المحجلين، وعلى البضعة الطاهرة فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، وعلى سبطي نبي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة، وعلى علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي عجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل مخرجه وجعلنا من أنصاره وأعوانه. عباد الله، أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله عز وجل ولزوم أمره. Respected sisters and brothers, I remind myself before I remind you of our responsibility towards our Lord and Creator. This idea of our shared humanity is one that finds much ground and value in even the Quran. If you look at the Quran, the vision of the Quran, and read holistic, whole, not selective, but all together, we read the Quran, we find that this idea of our shared humanity is evident. Look at the beginning and end of the Quran. The first chapter of the Quran, Surah Al-Fatiha, and the last chapter of the Quran, which is what? Surah. Good. Pass the quiz. Surah. Al-Fatiha. 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 Surah. Al-F The first chapter of the Quran and the last chapter of the Quran. The first chapter of the Quran begins Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Praise be to God, Lord of whom? Lord of the Shia of the faith, or the Muslims, Christians, Jews, the Lord of all of the universe and all of God's creation, all human beings, their Lord, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How many times did we recite our prayers outside of? So the Quran begins by reminding us of our shared humanity, that we have a shared Lord, one Creator, Lord of all human beings. Fast forward all the way to the end of the Quran. Surah An-Nas, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ. Say, I seek refuge in the Lord of whom? An-Nas. Not the Lord of Yahweh of Ahl-Bayt, or so on and so forth. The Lord of all people. Again, reminding us of our shared humanity. And the Quran is filled from beginning to end. These are just examples I gave you from the beginning of the Quran and from the end of the Quran. But within, there's this idea of our shared humanity. And so, it's important for us to remember this, that this is evident in our teaching. When we come to the teachings of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. In the hadith, he says, all humans are the children of God, not biologically. Doesn't mean that we are the biological metaphor. God is the creator of all humans. And, he says, and the best of God's children is the one who is most useful to us. One who's the best as parent, ask, who do you love amongst siblings? Parents love one child. You may interact with your children in different ways, but your love is the same. They're all your children. However, sometimes you find that among your children, they may display certain characteristics tug at your heart a little bit more. Huh? When they're kind, passionate, when they do good, when they listen to you as your parent, when they do well in school, right? So here the Prophet says all people are the children of God, metaphorically, but the best of the children is the one who is most useful to others. The one who lives his or her life taking care of others, being of benefit to others, taking care of themselves. Again, here, the Prophet is not saying just the most useful, his or her family or co-religionists, most others, all human. And so we are reminded again of the importance of this shared humanity and our responsibility. So we have to place, if we want to overcome hatred and intolerance, division in the world today, we have to place our shared humanity at the focus, at the forefront of our action. On our shared, we focus on this and we try to look past our differences, not to ignore our differences. And I mentioned several, aspects of our difference, but to look past our difference, focus on our shared humanity. How can we do this? Very, for one, begin by guidance matter of degree, banking, currency, Quran, Prophet always remind us of yourself as better than despite our difference. Always one. We begin with Allah and guide me good not just in my life, not just as an agent of positive in my life, but also as an agent of positive lives of others around me. Number one. Number two is that it is important for us to spend time and effort and money and resources in learning from one another about one another. Learn about. Quran says, made you right, لِتَعَارَفُوا. Learn, recognize. And this requires some time and want to get to know someone. Don't just name some real time or to bond with the other. And this is advantageous to us. So when it comes to all of other faiths, other thought, we have to learn from, and we have to learn about one another directly from one another. Not to engage in polemics where we read about one another, we learn about one another in order to prove the other side wrong. Of course, we all believe, when it comes to our religious beliefs, we believe that we are on the right path. Everyone believes we are on the right path. But what is important is that we learn about one another so that we can realize not just our differences, but our similarities. And this is beneficial even oneself. There's a beautiful story I read in a book once about a couple of young fish. They were swimming in a lake, river, and they were swimming close to the surface. And as they're swimming together, an older fish swims across from beneath them, a little bit deeper into the water. And so they exchange glances, the young fish and the older fish. And the older fish looks at them and says, "How's the temperature in the water up there?" And so the two fish, they look at one another and they're confused. And one turns to the other and says, "What on earth is water?" When we're completely surrounded only by our own environment, in echo chamber, when I only speaking and interacting with people who share only my ideas and only my beliefs, then I don't make sense of the world around me. So we have to learn about one another from one another. And this takes time and effort. It takes relationships. And finally, that we participate with one another in goodness. Again, this is what the Quran tells us. God says, "I created different beliefs, laws, ways for each of you. فَاسْتَبِقُوا الْخَيْرَاتِ." Compete with one another in goodness. Compete with one another in goodness. Don't compete in trying to prove one another wrong or show that you are superior. With one another in what? Good acts. Turn to one another and work with one another. Extend your hand. There are organizations, there are individuals who are like-minded, want to promote the goodness of society. Work with them. And these are some of the opportunities that we have. And if we do so, and we teach our children to do so, then we are contributing to a society that does not tolerate the society, recognize society, recognize there are challenges out there that hold hands with one another in order to overcome. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this blessed occasion, the birth of Amir al-Mu'mineen, blessed for you and your families, to grant us the honor of the ziyarah of Amir al-Mu'mineen in this life and his shafa'ah and intercession in the hereafter. Before I step down, just a couple of reminders, brothers and sisters. Tomorrow, inshallah, Universal Muslim Network, youth-run organization, is holding a hike at Griffith Park in the morning and a discussion about the life and legacy of Amir al-Mu'mineen. I'll be there, inshallah, myself. I believe it begins at 8 a.m. And if you are interested, the youth are interested, please, I do recommend and suggest that you participate. The details are on their Instagram page, Universal Muslim Network. So you can find the details for that. It'll be a nice time for us to go on a hike, spend some time outdoors, and also engage in discussion, inshallah, and learn from the life and legacy of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Next Sunday also, Sunday, February 12th, and the flyer is back there. The Shia Muslim Council of Southern California is holding the Imam Ali Inspires event, and you are all encouraged, inshallah, to participate. Again, the details are there to purchase your tickets. This is a nice time for us to come together as a community. Southern California community and members maybe from other regions will come also to celebrate the life and legacy of Amir al-Mu'mineen. I encourage you all, inshallah, to participate, to bring your families and friends. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wal-'asr. Inna al-insana lafi khusr. إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أن عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليا وأبناءه معصومين بالحق حجة الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. حي على الصلاة، حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، حي على الفلاح، حي على خير العمل، حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة، قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يسبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض الملك القدوس العزيز والذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة كانوا من قبل في ضلال وآخرين منهم لما يلحقوا بهم وهو العزيز. ذلك فضل الله والله ذو الفضل العظيم. مثل الذين حملوا التوراة ثم لم يحملوها كمثل الذين يحمل النار. بئس مثل القوم الذين كذبوا بآيات الله والله ظالم. قل يا أيها الذين هادوا إن زعمتم أنكم أولياء لله من الناس فتمنوا الموت لا يتمنون قدم الله عليم ظالم. قل إن الموت الذي تفرون منه فإنه ملاقيكم ثم تردون إلى عالم الغيب والشهادة تعمل. يا أيها كانوا الصلاة من يوم الجمعة فلا ذكر الله وذروا البيع ذلكم خير لكم تعلمون. إذا قضيت الصلاة في الأرض وابتغوا من فضل الله كثيرا لعلكم إذا رأوا تجارة لهوا انفضوا إليها وتركوك قائما. قل ما عند الله خير من اللهو والتجارة والله خير الرازقين. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. رب اغفر ولوالدي وارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا. بهما بالإحسان إحسانا وبالسيئات غفرانا. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. الله حميده. الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن أحد الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمد الله سمع الله لله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر الله. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف. الله أكبر. الله والله الحمد لله وخير الله ولا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. أنا عبده. اللهم صل على السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله 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 أكبر.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل أول قبل آخر بعد دعا لا يغفر رجاء رجاء بقى جميع ملائكة نسلك حالة أثنائك رسولك في خلقك. أشهد أن الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك لا عديل ولا خليك لا تبديل ولا أحدا الله عليه عبد ورسولك أدى ما حملت العباد جاحدا في الله عز وجل حق الجهاد أنه بشر بما هو حق الثواب بشر بما صدق العقاب. اللهم ثبتني على دينك ما أحييتني لا تضل قلبي بعد إذ هديت هب لي من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. على محمد وعلى آل محمد واجعلني من أتباعه شيعته وفقني يا دائم عاد جبت عليه من الطاعات وصلح الأرض في يوم الجزاء إنك أنت العزيز الحكيم.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. With what Sayyid was talking about, help.
الله أكبر، الله أكبر، أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمدا رسول الله، محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله، أشهد أن عليا الله. حي على الصلاة، حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، حي على الفلاح، حي على خير العمل، حي على خير. قد قامت الصلاة، قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله. أنت الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم. سبحان الله، سبحان الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. رب اغفر لي ولوالدي وارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا واجزهما بالإحسان إحسانا وبالسيئات غفرانا. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سبحان الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. أشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد. قبل شفاعته وارفع درجته. حول الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سبحان الله. سبحان الله. سبحان الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. حول الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سبحان الله. سبحان الله. سبحان الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. يا ولي العافية نسألك العافية، عافية الدين والدنيا والآخرة بمحمد وعترته الطاهرة. الله أكبر. بالله وبالله. الحمد لله وخير الأسماء لله ولا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. أشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
اللهم بسم الله يا من يا من واصرف عني بمسألتي إنك جميع شيء فإنه غير يا ذا الجلال والإكرام يا ذا النعماء والمن والكرم والدين اللهم सजनन आज रात इंशाल्लाह 8 बजे सज्जादे में जश्न अमीरुल मोमिनीन अली इब्न अबी तालिब इंडिया से मौलाना बिलाल आप सब मोमिनीन और मोमिनात पाबंदी अगेन 8 बजे प्रोग्राम in English again. There's a program, there's a Milad in tonight. It's Sajjadiya, 8 p.m. Maulana Bilal will be all Mu'minin. Inshallah tonight at 8 p.m.
Mu'minin, Mu'minat. For Shifa, please recite with me all for immediate recovery.